Joining me is Rick Shafton. He is a consultant from New Jersey, and he worked with the Steve Lonegan campaign at one point in time. He's got a very busy day today, and we appreciate him so much taking time out to talk with us here in South Georgia. Thanks for stopping by, Rick.
Thanks for having me on, Bill.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this debt ceiling increase debate that happened through the House and Senate over the last week and the fallout from it. If we can start off there, what exactly happened?
Well, they were hitting the debt ceiling. The nation was hitting the debt ceiling, and if it wasn't extended, then the government couldn't borrow. So Boehner tried to get some, to work some deal to put back the military pay that was cut, and Republicans were asking, well, why are we trying to increase spending? Even if it's spending we like, why are we trying to increase spending on this bill? So Boehner found he didn't have the 218 votes, so then he just went to the Democrats and said, we'll give you enough votes to pass this as Obama wants it, with no changes. So what we've had is a Republican Congress that has done everything Obama's wanted. They're like trained seals. And people are scratching their heads saying, why did we elect these guys when all they're doing is ratifying what the president's proposing and saying there's nothing we can do about it. We're powerless. People just do not want to accept that as an answer.
And Rick, what makes matters even worse is that Boehner, if he just shut his mouth, he probably would have been better off. But he made all these promises that he'd put up a fight, he'd make all these demands. You remember the Boehner rule, where he'd have dollar for dollar cuts? Where did all those promises go?
Out the window. I mean, they're just not real. I mean, you never promise to do anything you don't plan on following through on. And he clearly had no intention of following through on this. Because if he had, he would have just said, great, we'll have a standoff, and when your folks are getting their government checks, then you can come back to the table and we can talk like adults. But these guys are the worst negotiators on earth. They're the people who go to a car dealership and they're happy that they got the car for only $100 over sticker price. I mean, they're just horrible negotiators.
And it does feed into this narrative that, maybe they really don't want to negotiate at all. And, every time you watch politics and find out what's going on in D.C., it's like watching the WWF. It's rigged and it's fake. And what people say means absolutely nothing because what they do is completely different from what they say.
I don't think it's fake. I think they just don't have the will to fight.
One of the most stunning things that I heard and I read about, this is according to Roll Call, they said that the debt ceiling vote had the fewest number of votes from a majority on a bill that passed the House since at least 1991. And it just kind of blows your mind with all the Republicans that did vote for this, and they were pretty much being let out to dry. And all those Republicans represent voters, the ones that voted against this debt ceiling increase.
Well, I think the ones who voted for this were leadership generally, and some people who aren't running again, and moderate liberal Republicans. That's really pretty much who it was. But it defeats the argument, gee, we need more Republicans. If we only had 219 votes, this would have never passed. But we've got 230 or whatever it is, so we were able to get enough to flip. It's just demoralizing to conservative voters to see this go on.
No, it really lends credence to this argument where, and I've heard this from so many people, even some from real conservative people, we need a majority if we're going to do anything. We don't have the majority. Well, the House had the majority, and they squandered it, and they caved, which tells me if they have the majority, they're not going to do anything with it to begin with.
Reagan wanted to do. I mean, Tip O'Neill only had the House. Republicans had the Senate. Republicans had the White House under Reagan. Yet Tip O'Neill was able to stop everything Reagan wanted to do after the first year. Reagan got his tax cuts, and that was pretty much it. And O'Neill blocked just about everything else. So what were the main accomplishments in the latter Reagan years? They got the tax reduction through, the 28% rate that's now at nearly 40%, and we got amnesty for illegal aliens. But so Democrats were able to stop Reagan from doing almost anything. But Republicans are just like, we're powerless, we can't do anything, we're helpless, we're pathetic. It's why people just have no respect for the Republican Party.
You know, and you go as far back as Reagan. You can also look to Newt Gingrich and the Republican Revolution in the '90s. They were able to accomplish a lot, and they dragged President Clinton kicking and screaming to do it. And
they got a few things, but they didn't get a whole lot. They got welfare reform that's now been completely eviscerated by President Obama, with the acquiescence of the Republicans in the House of Representatives, who are funding everything Obama's doing. We've accomplished absolutely nothing in 20 years.
Let's talk a little bit about the Senate and what they did with this debt ceiling vote. It seems like Mitch McConnell hides in the shadows. He makes no statements whatsoever. He doesn't push for anything until the vote is already cast. Explain what happened in the Senate.
Well, in the Senate, they because I think it was Rand Paul and Ted Cruz and Mike Lee, they were filibustering the debt ceiling increase. So they needed to get 60 votes to pass to move the question for a vote, to shut off debate. And a number of Republicans voted with Obama and the Democrats to shut off debate, and then they voted against the final passage. So they could say, oh, I voted against raising the debt ceiling. But they voted to give, that wasn't the real vote. The real vote was the cloture vote, as it was on Obamacare. So it was the vote on cloture, not the vote on the bill. That was the critical thing. And when they got the 60 votes before Scott Brown got elected, that was it. So after that, they only had 59 votes, but it really didn't make a difference. They had gotten cloture, they had moved the question, and that was it. That's always the key vote, is the cloture vote. And they were able to get cloture because of a number of turncoat Republicans.
Do you believe that Ted Cruz is winning the day so far by exposing the senators and their votes?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the reason he's winning it is because he's controlling the debate, not Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell's not controlling the debate.
Tell me a little bit about how this roll call played out, where they pretty much hid from the final Senate vote, where they were playing this game where they didn't have their names called out in the deal that was struck, and they would cross off their names and then write their names back in, and how that debacle went down.
Well, they didn't call out the names of the senators and they go aye or not, an A or whatever on the vote. They did it as this written thing so that nobody could have a tape recording of Senator John Cornyn saying aye, or Lamar Alexander saying aye, or any of these other turncoats saying aye, because they knew that somebody like me would use that in a campaign commercial. It doesn't make a difference. I mean, they did it anyway. You can illustrate it.
You know, this whole 51 vote majority to get things passed in the Senate, you know, the more and more I look at it, it seems like it's not something necessarily that Harry Reid wants, but it seems like more Republicans like Mitch McConnell and John Cornyn want, where they can go ahead and vote no, and they don't have to fight on anything, and they can go back to their voters and say, hey, look how I voted. My hands are tied, couldn't do a darn thing.
Yeah, that works with some people. But fortunately, the Republican primary electorate is getting much smarter, and they just don't fall for this nonsense anymore.
Rick Shafton, we appreciate you taking time out on your very busy day here to talk a little bit more about this, and we appreciate you stopping by.
All right. Call me anytime.